I took the liberty to acquire the United States all-cause mortality data from 1900 to 1998, so almost 100 years of data. And then I put it against this little graph that comes from the USDA, 101 years of butter and margarine. Per capita consumption of butter and margarine in pounds per year from 1909 to 2010. So I just made note here of 1914. The cardiovascular death rate was 158 per 100,000. So I think tuberculosis was just getting under control around that time. So there were some years where tuberculosis surpassed. But since about that time, cardiovascular death has been number one. So everybody agrees, cardiovascular death's number one, okay, for cause of death. But the proportion, the relative number changes. Look here, in 1945, am I right? Here we go. And we'll post these. In 1945, cardiovascular deaths went up to 320 per 100,000. So it more than doubled. But look at the graph at that time. See, when it was low, the margarine use was low, the butter use was high. Okay? And then when cardiovascular deaths doubled, butter was
decreasing,
was almost half the use it was before, and margarine was on the uptrend. Okay? And then that cardiovascular death rate in, and I jumped up to 1984 because it's pretty much the same, and then it goes up and down. It stayed up around high 290s. Over here was 303 deaths per 100,000. With margarine shadowing butter now in use. And now there's a very nice little special line right here, this little downward slope in the late 90s. You see the margarine line is going down, and butter stayed the same. Margarine use went down. Cardiovascular death rate per 100,000, 262. So,
why did margarine go down? Do you
well,
know?
I think because I remember when I was growing up in the 90s, I heard that margarine was bad. I think people even then were talking about how bad it is.
And butter is making a comeback.
Butter is now making a comeback. Thankfully, it's making a comeback. So there you have it, folks.
And biggest culprit within margarine is omega-6.
Yeah,
And
omega-6. And folks, we didn't talk about trans fat in here. Trans fat was probably in the margarine, but as of, I don't know how many years ago, margarine's not allowed to have trans fat in it. Trans fat has been outlawed in our country. But a small amount of it is allowed to be in our food, because if you see polyunsaturated fat, partially hydrogenated anything, that's trans.
partially hydrogenated
Yeah,
anything.
if you see hydrogenated oil, partially hydrogenated oil, that's trans fat,
How is it trans fat?
because it's been hydrogenated. So if you think of organic chemistry, you have a fatty acid chain. Like you have the cis.
Yeah.
So like you have the double bond,
That's
and then
reactive.
you have up and down, and you have up and down. Cis is when the large chains are in one direction, either both down or both up. Trans is when you hydrogenate it, and then the orientation flips, and then you get trans. So it goes from cis to trans fatty acid. And then the trans fatty acid is more stable. So now it's more of a straight line. It's less of a crooked thing. So if it goes in more of a straight line, it can have more order. So it will be more solid at room temperature. And so bakers and cooks and dessert chefs can more easily make and craft things that are more aesthetically pleasing
With the trans.
with the trans fat, at the expense of giving everybody type 2 diabetes and shrinking their testicles. So that's the short of it, folks. The bottom line is eat organic, Eat grass-fed, eat wild-caught, eat pasture-raised. Do not settle for anything else. That's it.